How do you know if the fatigue, brain fog, or health issues that you're facing are actually from environmental toxins? Dr. Gertrude Lyons is here today walking us through her toxin testing, her personal story, and ultimately her decision to do therapeutic plasma exchange, TPE. And also, she's sharing her experience throughout the whole thing and the unexpected results. It's pretty wild, so let's dig into it. Well, today I'm very excited to chat with you, Dr. Gertrude Lyons, and you are the first one on the podcast TPE Blueprint that actually we're talking to as a story from someone
Mm.
who's done TPE, and I've been waiting to do one of these because I'm like, okay, I want to hear the real thing.
Yeah.
It's from
Get
someone
into
who's
the
been
real
through it.
thing, right? Not just all the, it's a honor and pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, and you have an interesting, I mean, everybody has their own origin story, right? Like
Sure.
why they found TPE, or, what motivated you. So ideally in this episode, that's kind of the stuff that I want to dig into is
Yeah,
like, okay, so how did it all start with you? Enough
sure.
to like set you up to being like, oh, what's this toxin thing? And then
Mm.
how do you find TPE? What does it mean to you? But
Yeah.
I guess by the end of this, like how, yeah, tell me like what you would like someone listening or watching to understand from, if you were to just think of project out there, okay, here's the end goal that I hope the listener or viewer gets.
hmm You want me to answer that now, or you're
Yeah,
hope? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were saying like that's where we're gonna get, and you're gonna like tell them that at the
I don't know.
end.
I just want I
No,
want to yeah hear
no.
from
I
your
think
side since you've been through it.
what I would say is to really like have a listener get that we live in a very toxic world. It is having an impact on all of us. So being curious for yourself, getting tested, just understand what the impact is for yourself. So then you can make discerned decisions with, something that, is fairly new and accessible and available now is the TPE. So I'm a big one for
Hmm.
follow your gut, follow your intuition. If this feels right and you have a sense that, you know, s- there's something I can actually do about this, then I say follow all those breadcrumbs until, you make a discerned decision for yourself.
That's a perfect setup, and that's what I wanted to hear just from your words. Like as someone who's been through it and someone who might just be thinking or just learning. Uh, Tell me about let's take it back
Okay.
to you've done a lot of stuff. You grew up in Michigan, right? So
You
I
want me to
guess
start there?
yeah, start there enough to where it sets up the whole story of like, okay, so toxins came out of
Yeah.
somewhere in this journey. So take us
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, so I grew up in Michigan. We literally lived on the Saint Clair River, which is a shipping channel. Freighters go by. Beautiful, right? I looked across the river to Canada.
Mm.
So lovely. We boated, swam, like did a lot in there. And then, right down the river was a one coal plant here on the U.S. side. I could also see from our yard a coal plant on the Canadian side, and things that you joke about, like my dad would joke about Monsanto and Dow Chemical being right up the river, like,
Mm.
and it just nobody was really paying that close attention. He would make kind of sarcastic remarks about, the water we're swimming in or the water you're
Mm.
swimming in, but like, ha ha ha. We used to, we go out in the boat and we go across to Canada to the Lambton power plant because right, in the river right in front of it, the water was warm.
Wow.
So
Oh man.
now,
Okay.
of course, was anybody asking them, like supposedly it was just steam water that was coming out and being put in the river. But back then, like, none of this it was barely getting regulated, if at all. Right. So
Yeah.
who knows? I mean, I'm not glowing, but, who knows exactly what was going on.
Mm.
And I didn't really think about it a lot until, I live here in Chicago and I was reading the story about Greg Achatz, who's the owner, founder, world renowned top chef of Alinea restaurant, which if anyone looks up Alinea, you'll see, you know,
Yeah.
one of the highest ranking restaurants, who went through tongue cancer.
Wow.
And he tells his story, and I remember, I don't know if I read the book, but an article, and they're like, how do you that's, wow, a chef, and you have tongue cancer, oh my God.
Sure.
What are your thoughts about like how you would have gotten that? And he's the one that brought up, like, I grew up in this town in Michigan, and with around a lot of toxicity, and I'm not saying that's the only reason, but definitely add that to my list.
Wow.
So you know, I have to talk about that because it's like that's something big and obvious about, my whole upbringing was in that atmosphere. How could, that not also have had an impact?
So was that the first time you connected, or maybe you thought like, oh, maybe toxins?
I don't know if that's the first time I thought about toxins. It certainly
Well,
was the
for that.
first time I thought about, like, oh, I probably am someone who has even extra doses. I've certainly, I've been in kind of a bit of the holistic, like integrative
Mhm.
medicine, looking at everything. So trying to, take toxins out of things. And, that's been a lot of my adult life, is some
The
sense,
prevention
some
kind of
awareness. Yeah. Prevention and, you know, where are the chemicals? What can I avoid? And,
Mhm.
things like that. So early adopter of all house water filters and, things like that.
Oh, so you're
So
doing the work for a while then. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
EMFs, like all that just made
Uh-huh.
sense to me, like intuitively. I'm like, yeah, these aren't good things. Now, I was never, my friend never had a microwave. Like that was
Mhm.
something I had a hard time getting rid of. Still haven't, but anyway, like
Sure.
to me, like the people aren't concerned about those things boggles my mind, right? Like when it's been proven that
Uh-huh.
aluminum in your deodorant, it is linked to cancer and Alzheimer's, like why take the risk, right? So
Right.
I've had that, kind of level of awareness, but I shouldn't say never. Dr. Savage, before he was doing TPE, tested me and we did, something like chelation, so
Uh-huh. Yep.
had been dabbling in it, so to
Okay.
speak.
So what
Um,
was, yeah, I guess like when you noticed, or maybe the light bulb clicked a little bit,
mm,
multiple times or ways, and obviously you're aware, and I think now more and more people are becoming aware. That's partially this whole podcast is
yeah.
talk about how to eliminate a lot of those things in our lives, plastics, especially heating them up and things like that. Um, but in terms of your own, like you mentioned testing. So like what, I guess,
Mhm.
how does the progression look like? So you became aware, you kind of started thinking about it. What happened then?
I was always trying to do things that I were at least like trying to eliminate, limit where I could, right? But not necessarily adamant about it. And then, a couple things happen, like you get older, right?
Mhm.
So, now I'm about to turn 60 this year. And,
Awesome.
so I'd say, particularly in the last 5 years, you start thinking, well, not just longevity, and I'd like to live longer, but you get more and more, the chances increase of things like cancer, Alzheimer's,
Yeah.
things like that. And so I started, thinking about it more and
Hmm.
thinking like, gosh, is there something I can do about this? And that's when, both my kind of Western medicine, like straight on, like doctor that I started with a couple years ago, she did a basic test of heavy metals and, some toxins and had a little bit of advice, like what to
Hmm.
cut back on that. But um, also seen Dr. Savage as an integrative medicine doctor for probably 10 years on and off,
Oh, wow. Okay.
but even in the seeing him, like we didn't really like bring that to the forefront until I guess the first time I did something testing it was pre-COVID. So, like
Okay.
at least 5 years ago. Oh
Five-ish.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5, 6 years ago. Like, why don't we test you? Did a test, and then, there was an intravenous like chelation process we did that I'm
Yeah.
like, I'll do things if it feels like it can make a difference, if it can make a dent, if there's things I can do to actually rid my body of toxins, like
Yeah.
I'm all for it because I 100% have believed in the connection, for quite
Oh
some
yeah,
time.
like you understood the science enough and things like that.
Yeah.
I guess what was your yeah, like what was your feeling when you kind of well, when you discovered, maybe the results of the test? Like was there
So
a moment or
the
some
first
aha?
time or the second, like
I guess both. Yeah, I guess
okay.
first time is interesting because most people haven't
Yeah,
even tested.
right. So the first time getting a test, it wasn't as extensive as the test that led up to me actually deciding to do TPE. But, it was fairly thorough and it's like, ooh, some of these are, really significant and yeah, I'd like to do what I can about this. Right?
So it's almost that like aha, well, now you see your data.
Yeah, when you see the data, right? But oh gosh, it was probably more than 5 years ago but I wasn't in a like, ooh, like panic about it. It's like, oh, there's
Hmm.
something I can do. Let's try it, right? Like, okay, if we can lessen this a little bit or
Yeah.
so I knew, he wasn't testing me to then just say like, sorry, you're completely out of luck and there's nothing we can do about it. Try. I knew that testing and seeing that, but you have to kind of see it sometimes because we all know we have it in it or we could believe it, but
Mhm.
then when you see your specific things, it's, it kind of wakes you up a little bit like, wow, all of that is in there, right? Like it's like, of course we all have mercury or,
Right.
like there's certain heavy metals. It's like, yeah, we're all going to have that.
Industrial
Um,
stuff
yeah,
and
that's been talked about for a long time, but
mhm.
actually, the ones well that Dow Chemical upstream was putting out like Roundup and those
Yeah.
things. Who knows how much of that got in the river? But
Yeah.
um, that was the first time. I think roll fast forward some years, and now Dr. Savage has started doing the TPE. Like
Mhm.
we've are enough in relationship. Like I have been around for the progression.
Yeah, you
Like
have.
the first people doing it, and hearing about it. And it's like, it was one of those things that it was extensive enough of a process that I wasn't just like, oh, sign me up. Like that
Yeah.
sounds like a little intense. So
How so then? Like, yeah, what was
yeah,
your I
just
guess when you
hearing about
started to
it for
look
the first time it's not just like the other thing was just sitting there with an intravenous, like while they, what I did before the chelation, that's
uh
just putting something in your body that helps you eliminate the toxins.
right.
This is like we're going to take all of your plasma out, wash it and put it back in. And that I was like, oh, okay, that's something I want to think about.
Uh-huh.
That just didn't
Tell
sound
me
quite
more.
as
Yeah.
simple, right? Like that sounded like, oh, we're using this machine that it's medically approved, but for a different purpose. Like, I'm
Right.
like, I think let's see how, for me, it wasn't like I had huge doubt about it. It just sounded like, oh, this is a commitment and this is,
Mhm.
something not like I was really worried, like, oh, something's going to go wrong and it's going to hurt me. But it wasn't going to be fun,
Mhm.
It was that.
Is well, yeah, walk us through, I guess, like that and this is great because like I think that's the natural reaction. And obviously it's something we're all learning also like what is possible now because this is newer technology, but at the same time,
Yeah.
like you said, it's more of a commitment than just getting, well, I mean, it's, I guess, walk me through kind of like how did you
Yeah.
get over that hump and how did you learn more about it?
Yeah, for sure.
That whole feeling of actually, okay, now I'm going in and committing to it.
So I was first like, okay, he's kind of starting, he's getting a sample enough together to see. I'm like, okay, I don't have to be one of those first samples, right? Like
Yeah.
let's see how kind of a group that goes through it first, how do they do? How do they respond? Like what's
Yeah.
um, you know, I don't want to be the like immediate test pancake, right?
Sure. Yeah. Fair.
I'm not going to wait 10 years or anything, but let's see how this is going.
Yeah.
So he kept me updated. Like there's a number of reasons why I've just been able, I've, I don't know if I weren't kind of in his world and, I'm someone who, when he got this new arm of his business going, I'm, someone he refers to as a coach, right?
Mhm.
Like, cause I do life coaching and, in that arena. So we have other avenues besides him being one of my doctors to talk, right? So,
Good.
he's always so excited about it, and like something new would happen, like, oh, so and so, at University of Chicago, and like these people here you know, are really interested. They were writing a paper together, so I kept kind of getting fed information just in his
Through the
excitement and the
chats.
conversation, right, in the chats. So more and more of that added up, for me. And then now a group has gone through and he's like, I'm even, he's like, I knew the results would be good, but these are pretty amazing, like what's happening. And we've never been able to do anything to actually rid our body of toxins. We could limit it and maybe lower them a little bit, but to actually
Remove.
completely get rid of some of them and remove them
Yeah.
hadn't been done before, right? So for me, some of that credibility of, outside sources, not just his own study, and not like I don't trust him, but,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
when you get then these other people in other arenas and other fields that are like, this is solid. This is real. Like, this is, validated. I want to be part of it, that kind of
Ooh, yeah.
thing that he was sharing, and then seeing the results and stuff he was putting together so he could show the results. I think it was enough of that accumulated where I was then like, well, I should do the test. Like, let's see where I'm at now. Like, how is it? Well,
Another toxin test.
yeah. So now
Yeah.
he's got another, a way to do the test that was,
Hmm.
now looking at, you could see like plastics and, things like the fertilizer, like every type of toxin,
It's a lot. Yeah.
which
I've
is,
seen my own.
yes,
But yeah.
exactly, which I can't even name them all, but
Right.
like
Yeah.
super extensive. And mine was really bad, like
Mm.
really, he's like, yeah, you're kind of in the top five of which and he
Yeah.
explained to a level like, yeah, we can't put that all on. I know we're hyping up the fact that I was probably exposed more. He's like, but also, you know, I think like body type and,
Mm.
you know, I'm white, female. There were other things that added up. Like, he's like, but even amongst the thin white females, you were, one of the
On the high.
worst. Right? So
Because
it's like,
he's
ah,
spoken about on previous episodes. There's different body types, races, ages,
yeah,
genders. I mean, we're all different, right? So,
exactly. And I totally expected my husband. So my husband and I were both like in our own, we both see him and we're
uh
kind of exploring this ourselves. And I expected his to be worse because he's bulky. I thought like if you have more body mass and you're
right.
like a big guy, you'd be carrying and holding more toxins and it would be worse. And he was not even, like his weren't great, but he wasn't breaking any records and mine were worse. I'm like,
Right.
that's not fair.
Yeah.
Um,
The
so
fat storage and and
I
other,
guess,
yeah,
yeah,
and again, I'm not the doctor here, but yeah,
right.
Dr. Savage has talked about that on some episodes.
That was, the like, all right, well, it's good a time as any, let's do it. And, it coincided, I think, yes, I'm not going to lie. Like, was there then, honestly, if it were 20 years ago, or 30, like we want our kids to get tested. They're in their 20s,
Mm. Yeah.
because they're just, people are getting sicker earlier and then all of that, right? Which
Yeah.
maybe you've talked about. Um, but you kind of have that attitude like, you know, I'll deal with that later or whatever, right? Well, once you start aging, it's like I don't have a lot as much later as I had. And, my
Yeah.
dad had dementia, just different things that you're like, ooh, like if I can do something about this and, we have, we're able, at this point, it's
Yeah.
not an inexpensive procedure, right? So
Right.
that, yeah, let's do it. So said yes, got it, and started.
That's
And we
incredible.
can, you can ask specifically then about
Yeah.
the actual journey.
Yeah, I'm that's where I'm very curious about. And then of course how things were, how you felt after. But
Yeah.
After this whole journey, what I really learned here is like there are a lot of health conscious people. I think I'm considering myself one as well. Uh, but no, there's a lot of things. No matter what you do, how much you pay attention to it, how much you avoid it, and sometimes it just got in. And I think TPE gave me a good opportunity to restart my body again.
please, if you can walk me through the first TPE session, because did you have a
Yeah.
series of sessions?
5.
Five. Okay.
I did 5 sessions.
Gotcha.
And he gave me a heads up. He's like, with as bad as yours are, I just want to like, 5 may be totally enough, but just to be a little bit prepared that, if we don't see the results we want, we might add a session or two, to it.
Got it.
So I was like, okay. Back when I did the chelation, or like, getting rid of
Hmm.
maybe a little bit of toxin, I didn't feel any different. So I didn't go into this expecting to like, oh my gosh, I'm going to like feel 20 years younger. Or, I figured this is all going on inside. And if it's going to help my body work better, I may not on the outside, like even have any strong sense of like what's happening. Right.
Sure.
So
Yeah, I get it.
I set that bar very low, even semi non-existent, right? Like, oh, I'd like to feel a little different or think that
Yeah.
it's, gonna give you more pep in your step or whatever you think. Like something's got to like translate here. So I went into it with no expectation. So then, yeah. So then, your first session, you go, and quite honestly, I would say for me, of the overall thing, the most challenging part of it is the fact that, so, they put a pretty big needle in one side, that's the one that's going to like take out the your plasma, right?
Hmm.
So that's not a minor, it's not like a typical, like just when you get an IV, like a nice like IV, right? It was like bigger. So you have to hold your arms. So for me, things like when they say like, don't move your arm, and for 2 hours. And
You're like,
not only like, so, position it well, like don't move your arm. And oh, by the way, you have to squeeze a rubber ball
okay.
in your hand,
What, the whole time or
the whole
off?
time,
Yeah, okay. Yep.
right? It isn't just like, oh, every now and then, like squeeze the ball. I
Mm.
would say like just because I kind of thought like, oh, this, hook me up and I'm just gonna go to sleep. I'll just like,
Sure.
chill out. It's like, no, you have to like actually like stay present and aware. And, the first couple, and then like if something starts feeling like, oh, okay, oh, maybe you've like been squeezing too hard and it, so there's like
Mm.
some adjustments and, things and I would say the only one that I would say was kind of hard, so to speak, is the second time I went. Um, it it kind of like something happened with the vein. It like collapsed or something, and so which sounds bad, but it's not like dangerous. It
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
wasn't doing what it was supposed to do anymore. So they had to like take it out and put it in again,
Got it.
and
Like a reset. Yeah.
it's totally not fun. You just want to get it done, right? Like it's just like get it done. Like, okay,
Yeah.
just keep it moving. I don't want any interruptions. But the good thing is, like, once I got through the first two, you get into a rhythm.
Hmm.
They have a TV screen. I thought I'd like kind of like meditate and like zen out doing
That's what
it,
I was going to. I was like, oh, let's put the
No,
headphones on
no,
maybe.
it's like I had to just watch Dairy Girls, just a silly show that, was kind of mindless. So I could remember to keep squeezing the ball and,
Hmm. That's
and
good. Yeah, whatever works. Yeah.
then for me, because my husband, he didn't have any of this, like I had to kind of regulate, like could also easily start feeling a little lightheaded,
Mhm.
a little bit nauseous, just because I'm sensitive. A lot
Sure.
of doing something like that in my body, I'm gonna feel it. So I did, you know, I learned like he had there, and I'd say he being Ryan, who was the technician who was
Mhm.
so wonderful, like great, staff and people working with you and all of that, doing everything, making you feel so comfortable. And like all of that was great. So taking juice, taking water, but then I then would like bring snacks, right? So
Uh-huh.
once a ways into it, if I started feeling like maybe a little bit nauseous or something, I'd just eat crackers,
Okay.
so,
Hearing that
it's,
started. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Whereas my husband, like, whatever, he just like did it, watched the show and,
No issues.
no issues, like
All right.
doesn't really think twice about it. So I'm just saying that's my experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I kind of got a little used to it. And, by the third one and forward, it was pretty routine. Right.
So you found your rhythm with it.
So that's the actual like happening of it. Right.
Mm.
So for me, I'm going to say this because I said it before without any expectations. So unexpectedly, I would say after the first two, I could feel a difference. Like
Wow. So how so
I
specifically?
could feel like I really feel like my baseline energy is up. Like not like I was suddenly like, oh my God, I can run a marathon now, right?
Right.
But I was able to tell like I'm not getting as tired as easily. My sleep is better. And I said this too, I felt like my digestive system was like
Mm-hmm.
feeling more optimal than it ever had, elimination, all that. Like, and, when I said that to Dr. Savage, he's like, well, when your body isn't having to spend so much of its energy and time fighting toxins, it can just function, it can
Yeah.
just do the job it's there and supposed to do. And I'm
Mm.
like, that makes so much sense. Right. So for me, I felt like, wow, like this, my work, I've worked out with a trainer, the same trainer for a number of years.
Mm.
And when, we told him we were doing this process and he was training us like kind of from the beginning, through it.
Yeah.
And he's like, you guys are always like, good to train. He's like, it's so obvious,
So it's noticeable even to him.
noticeable
Yeah.
to him.
Yeah.
And I don't know quite exactly what words, like it's kind of an energy thing. It's I felt like, the work of the workout was more effective, if that
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense, right?
Totally.
Like it was, and I was just away for 3 months and I was working out, I was doing some things and just got back. And I was like, usually like that kind of transition, if I haven't been, doing a weight workout at least a few days a week, when you come back, it's like, you dread
Feeling it.
it, you're
Yeah.
exhausted. And I was sore, don't get me wrong, but I was like, this is great. Like I feel so good,
Oh, wow. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So I have been able to, definitely speak very positively of actually feeling a difference. My
Mm.
husband, he's like, yeah, but some of it, I think like it's just a sensitivity also tune. Maybe, he's like, I don't feel I certainly don't feel worse,
Yeah.
but I'm not feeling it quite at the same level you are. But then
And I
when
know everyone's kind of different with their
everyone's different, right?
mind
And
body connection, feeling,
yeah,
perceiving it. Yeah.
yeah. But now I'm saving the best for last.
Oh, please. Yeah.
So yeah, like I'm feeling, good and all that. I would say like starting in the fall, people just like people I knew, people I didn't know, like I would be places that are like, you look amazing. Like, and I'm like, oh, well, thank you, and no, really, like your energy, there's like, now I'm not going to say this is all TP. I work on myself. I do stuff, right? Like,
Sure.
but I can't ignore the fact that like that was a big, proponent. Say that to say also I was writing a book at the time. Like I was under a lot of stress. So I think it also like helped with that, with that kind of the energy and staying with.
Yeah.
And I'm like, gosh, that's like so nice, like random strangers. And then like people I hadn't seen for a few months,
Yeah.
I would run into, they're like, what are you doing? Like, are you reverse aging? Like, But first they'd say something like, "Did you get a haircut? Like, what's different?" And then they'd look. They're like, "No, seriously. Like, what are you doing? Because you look like you're reverse aging."
Wow.
And now I'm like, "Well, amazing, great. Like, I'll take that." It's
Sure, why not?
one of the benefits. Yeah, somebody just said it again recently. So, to hear that, like, you might hear that,
Yeah.
a little bit from someone, but you really get that it's an inside out thing, right? Like,
Mm,
it's so clear to me that, like, if stuff is struggling, even if you're not like sick, right? But
mhm.
your body is not working optimally, it's going to be reflected on the exterior, but
Yeah.
if it's, working well and you're treating it well, like it actually shows up, it really does.
So what would you, yeah, like how would you tell other women, men? I mean, like everyone's gonna have a different experience, but like,
Hmm.
yeah, those, because I'm imagining, and I don't know who are, yeah, everybody's a different kind of candidate. I feel like everybody's toxic at some level. I don't know.
Of course.
Don't quote me on that, but I think it's true. We live in a
How could
toxic
we
place.
not be, right? Like,
Yeah, you can't get away from it. So,
I mean, maybe in some like remote Himalayan areas where there's
yeah,
maybe,
yeah,
but
untouched
it's so in our
waters.
atmosphere, right? Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't know but like, yeah, I guess what's your conclusion now after going through this? I mean, you've been through it for a long time. You said over a decade or so of at least working through the toxin, your personal toxin levels.
Hmm.
Obviously, you've had that tight connection with Dr. Savage, fortunately, at an early time where he was going through a lot. So good
Yeah,
on you.
I
But
know.
someone now that's like now they've heard your story, their brain they're thinking about like, okay, so I guess what would you recommend someone to do for themselves? If they're like, oh, this is very interesting, or like I can
Yeah.
relate.
I mean, if you could do anything from, you know, start reading up on it, start, looking and like, but do something, right? If this is striking you and you're thinking, you have some sense like, oh, that makes sense, then do something about it, right? And keep letting yourself be curious. And if you have questions, ask them, and really, but I would say aside from that, it it doesn't hurt to know your data. So I would
Mm,
absolutely recommend getting, what's your baseline now? And, or just find out like where do I fall and with the toxicity and what does it mean? What could it what what does it mean to have this high
yeah,
level? And, like just be really curious.
I like that.
And then, then decide if this is something, because to me it's like, okay, it's this high, this is the first thing, and no one's ever been able to figure out a way to like get toxins out of your body, right? And um, while not a big fan of any kind of medical procedure if I can avoid it,
Same.
it's
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But then when you even like looked at it simply, it's like, oh, there's a machine that like takes your plasma out, washes it, so to speak, and you like an
Mhm.
oil change,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
put in clean stuff and that helps your body. Like that, is to me, it's not like they're saying like, hey, try this drug, this will block you from toxins. Like that would
Mhm.
that I don't know.
Right.
That would be a whole other avenue to go on, right? Like there's a
Yeah.
way, even though it's a medical procedure, it's natural, so to speak, right? Like so
Hmm.
you're
Right.
not
Well, that's his back. Yeah, and you're right. Yeah, it lands differently. There's a lot of flavors to, I guess, the end
mhm.
result that people are after,
Yeah.
and ways to get there. But I guess like I guess now that you've been through the sessions, you know so much, you're feeling better, looking better, in the eyes of yourself or others. um,
Exactly.
what are you most excited for in your health journey now, like where you're at, and maybe how does
Yeah.
it relate to
I
like your
mean, the
work?
nice thing is because in some level you could say like, oh, now that we have this procedure, I can do whatever I want and just go do it again, if they build back up.
Right.
But for me, it had, the opposite effect. It's like, oh, if I just went through that, like I want to get, the miles out of it, right?
Mm.
And treat my body even better and like start getting even more attuned to what are the, where could plastics kind of, be coming in, and so it's helped me like up my level of elimination, right?
For
To
sure.
build on it. I'm certainly not opposed to thinking that at some point, like it's the world we live in, there might be a
Mm.
point at which like, you need to do a little bit more again. But
Right.
I think I intend out of this, like I have a lot of life left to live. Like, I
Absolutely.
just wrote a book, Rewrite the Mother Code.
Cool.
I did a TED Talk. I have, I have a career, a passion that I want to be able to do in some form or another. My husband and I were never people like, oh, I can't wait to retire and do nothing.
Right.
Our
You're
lifestyles
going. You
might
got stuff to
change
do.
along the way and stuff, but I want to be active. I want to be, if our kids have grandkids, I want to, be vibrant and healthy and
Awesome.
be able to spend, quality active time with them.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
So to be able to look forward to things like that and then know, like, even with everything you do, stuff can still happen, right? Like
Yeah. It's life.
sadly, that's
Yeah.
life, right? It's,
Yeah. It's
I would be upset, obviously, but I certainly have, friends who have led very healthy lives or, like made a lot of really good choices and, have had cancers
something.
and, all sorts of things. So,
You're right. Yeah. Well,
I'm not looking for the fountain of youth or, something magical, but, you know, give when there's something that, feels like it's supportive and safe and as natural as possible, like,
mm,
yeah, sign me up.
yeah. Well, you did, and thanks for sharing so much because like all the details, it's selfishly for myself, because I'll be going through a
Yeah,
procedure as well. It helped me visualize a lot of what I'll be getting into, but
sure.
also just sharing for everybody else here. I mean, this is yeah, thank you. That's what I'll say there. And
Yeah.
also point us to, I know you shouted out your book, but how can someone go find more of your work and maybe contact you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, there's ways that they definitely overlap, which is, why I emphasize being curious and asking questions. It's called Rewrite the Mother Code: From Sacrifice to Stardust, a Cosmic Approach to Motherhood. So for me, this is looking at mothering or motherhood as a journey of self-awareness, transformation, of, transcended experiences at its biggest, but it certainly is something that, I guess if I try and put it in some of these terms, like there's a lot of toxicity
Mm,
in the arena of motherhood in our culture right now. It's
yeah.
way over medicalized, technologyized, and we have gotten so far from the natural process rhythm of an experience that it's hurting us, right?
Mm,
Like it's so
yeah.
it's being able to be aware, right? Like kind of look at these codes, which could, some of them are like toxic to us because they limit our experience. They limit our ability to, have a full experience, a full life. But once we look at them, we can decide, we can
Mm,
eliminate them,
yeah.
ourselves
You have a
and
choice.
make
Yeah.
other
That's right.
choices, right? So raising the awareness, knowing that there's a lot more choice in the whole journey of mothering and motherhood that's available
Awesome.
to us. So yeah,
Cool.
thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, and do you have a website that someone can go check you out?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's www.dr Gertrude, Gertrude, Lyons, Lyons.com. So drgertrudelyons.com. So you can find my book there. I also just, my book informed a TEDx talk that's
Okay, good.
also,
Yep.
it's a big year. All these things are
Yeah,
happening,
that's a big
this year
deal.
that we're,
Thank you.
as far as us, the time we're recording this. So putting, these things out in the world, and it's, not lost on me that all of this happened, in this past year. And I had the benefit of, being able to enhance my energy level to do all of this
You're doing it
and
all.
not get
So
sick. That's the other thing I will say,
really,
since I have not had, I think since like, say like after the second one, so it'll be coming up on a year. I haven't had one illness,
nothing. Wow.
nothing.
Okay.
And,
Yeah,
you know,
jeez.
now granted, I was in Mexico for 3 months, kind of away from the winter sickness, but every time I talk to somebody, they either had COVID or norovirus or some bad flu or, something. And
You didn't get
yeah,
touched by any of it. Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
like
sorry, I
yeah.
forgot to add that one in. So
No,
we're ending
that's a
there.
big one.
It is a big one. Yeah.
Especially
So
I have two little kids in school, or one's
oh,
about to start school, so it's just everything's illness. So
everything. Yeah. And those kids, if you have little ones in school, like they were in the COVID years, right? So they didn't
mm,
get immunity. So they're getting sick
true.
all the time.
Very
Um,
true. Yep. Yep. Yep.
and
Yeah,
passing that. But
yeah.
yeah, so thank you for asking about the book and
Of course.
um,
Yeah.
my TEDx talk. It's all out there. I'll just search my name, Dr. Gertrude Lyons. You'll find
Good.
me.
Well, thank you so much, Dr.
Yeah,
Gertrude. And this, just everything about it, it's a very fascinating story. And hope we'll chat and see where things go, maybe in the future too. We'll do a little
absolutely.
check
Yeah,
back.
we'll come back, check in.
There
Right.
you go. All right. Well, thank you and have a great one.
Yeah, thanks for having me.